Good morning, Teresa, and congratulations on being the first and as yet only person who posted a video. Great having the opportunity to practice. I'm sorry about the picture here. It's quite dark in this room, but if I turn the other way, I've got the light directly in my face, so I'm sure you don't need to see my face that clearly. By the way, your picture was beautifully done, very nicely, very professional, speaking to the camera really well. Very happy to see you sitting down, so if you want to do that for your presentation, that's fine. And I'll just go back there a little bit. I know you've already posted, and I know you're going away on a holiday, so I hope you have a great time, and I hope this gets to you in time. Once again, sorry about my croaky voice. It just comes in and out from time to time. There's not a lot I can do about it. Okay, so I'll just go back to week 3, and I'm looking at my notes because I actually made quite copious notes about what you'd done because it was very interesting. You mentioned the use of mnemonics and acronyms for the elements and planets. Very much fits with cognitivism. So there's just that added element, if you like, in place to help people learn. And it is now taking into account the person rather than what's external with behaviourism. And that is, here's a group of kids that I need to teach. What is it about me and the theory that is going to teach them, rather than I've got this group of kids, what is it about them that they need? So it very much changes how you view your students. One of the things that I really, really enjoyed about your presentation was you were actually undertaking metacognition as you were presenting. So you were thinking about your own thinking as you were presenting, and you were questioning why. You were questioning why something was the way it was. And the particular one that I really loved was your reference, and you did this a couple of times, to sharing your theory with your students. And I love that. To me, if the more you explain to people why you were doing something the way you were doing it is really important, and it's something that I don't think we do enough of. One of the things that I found really useful in class is that whenever we did anything, I would always get the students, and I trained them to do this, was to recognise what did they think we were actually trying to achieve. You know, in doing this, in writing this story, what was I hoping for? And I just found that really, really helped the students to focus, particularly on fine-grained stuff. Like whenever I got a student to write a story, it was never about the story as a whole. It was always about an aspect that we'd been learning about, and I wanted to see demonstrated. So it would be like our learning outcome today was to see if we could use a range of what I called ambitious words that they maybe had never tried before. And that's all I would be looking for in that piece of writing. And that way I had students who maybe weren't that great at writing could still achieve the outcome and still consider themselves successful writers. So we would actually write that learning outcome up on the board, and the students would copy it into their book prior to starting their writing. So they would write the LO, learning outcome. Can I use ambitious words in my writing today? And what was great about that was at the end of the lesson, they could go back and make that call. Well, did I? And it was always a really, really great way if you were sending kids' books home. Parents don't actually know what it is that you're doing sorry, my computer has just gone off, what you're actually doing in class. So it gives them a heads up. Oh, this is what the student did. And your marking becomes much narrower and the student's focus becomes much narrower. So to me, explaining what the theory is just the next step for that. And I would absolutely do that. I would be very clear about it, because more than anything else, it really challenges you to understand what it is that you're doing and why you're making that decision. So bravo, I really, really love that. In the week 4 posting you did, you talked about working in pairs to complete a task. This collaborative learning is very close to my heart, but it's also an area that's very, very poorly done in classes. Collaborative learning requires, and it certainly falls under constructivism, collaborative learning requires 5 elements to be in place to call it collaborative learning. People often put kids in pairs or groups to complete work without having the other 4 elements in place. And that's something I think we'll go into a little bit later. I won't address it here, but it's just one of those areas that, like all theories, they can be implemented well or implemented poorly. And if they're implemented poorly, they actually impact hugely on whether or not a student can learn effectively. So pairs is one of those areas that is difficult. You gave the example of doing debates and learning from your peers in religion about moral reasoning and understanding that not everyone thinks the same way. And I think that's the strength of constructivism. I think, you know, being able to understand that there is a political, and I mean that in a small p, political aspect to the work we do as teachers, because we hold certain beliefs about things. And what is it about those beliefs that we promote in the classroom, and what values and beliefs do we encourage? And I think we've got to be very aware of the fact that we do hold values that may be very different to the values that we're seeing demonstrated in our parent body, or with other teachers on staff, or with the children who come into your class. So one of the things you also said was that the theory of constructivism requires students, it really challenges students to be active learners, and the frustration that can sometimes be felt when you're not seeing that potential being explored. I'll give you a very good example of that. I was actually hugely frustrated. I had a young boy in my class in year 4 who was, everything came very easily to him, and he would do the minimum amount of work. He was chosen to go into the gifted and talented group, which meant he was rewarded in many ways for his natural ability. But in class, I really struggled to get him to do anything other than the bare minimum. And that was a real dilemma for me as to whether or not he should have been allowed to go out to the gifted and talented group, because the way I structure my classroom is that children are constantly challenged. They do not ever finish their work. There is always something more that I can challenge them with. So the whole idea of going to gifted and talented to me did not have value for my method of teaching. So this child was going out at a time when I really needed him to be challenging himself in the work that we already had. So these kinds of little things are always going to come up in a school, and sometimes it's like, okay, what battle do I fight today, and what do I actually let go for the greater good? And in that case, I manage that in a variety of different ways. I actually put him into a different reading group because the students who were reading at the level that he could do well easily were going on and creating all kinds of responses that he really couldn't be bothered doing. So that was one way that I could say to him, well, until you're ready to do those things, you perhaps need to drop back to this group. And the groups were very fluid anyway, so it meant that it actually made him work harder, particularly in reading, because he wanted to actually be with his group at that time. So thank you very much for your presentation, Teresa. It was fantastic, and good luck on your holiday.